That's unfortunate.
I just messed up on
Alright, so we've multiplied and divided with our rational expressions. We've added and subtracted with our rational expressions. Today we're going to equations, and we're actually going to solve. So this first one that we're going to look at is, in my opinion, the easiest of the kind. This says 3 over x plus 1 is equal to 9 over 4x plus 5. This is my favorite kind of these. And the reason, and you'll see as we go through and look at the different looks on these, the reason this is my favorite kind is because I got one thing on the left and one thing on the right. That's how I'm seeing that. And you learned a neat little trick in middle school math that you could do anytime you had a fraction equal to a fraction. Remember what that was? Very good, CJ. You can cross multiply. So when we just have 1 on both sides, a fraction equal to a fraction, you can cross multiply. And that's what I'm going to do on this kind every single time. So you're going to distribute a 3 to that. I'll go ahead and write it out this time, but in the future I may just distribute it as I go. That's probably what I'll be doing, but I'm going to write it out this time. Same thing here. I got to distribute a 9 to that. But like Garrett said, in the future you can do that. Skip this step and do that in your head. That's fine and dandy. I got 12x plus 15 equals 9x plus 9. Good. Now you just got a normal little equation to solve. So you pick which term you want to start with and start moving stuff around. Anybody got a preference?
Let's take the 9 out.
Alright, the 9x, Mr. Cross said. That's what I would have done too. I like to get rid of my smaller x first. So that gets me 3x plus 15 is equal to 9. And now you got a 2-step middle school equation. Whoops. It's jumping all over the place. What are we doing to solve here?
So x equals
Subtract 15. Subtract the 15. So we got 3x is equal to, what's 9 minus 15?
Negative 6.
Negative 6. And then last step. Now, I'm not going to plug all these completely back in every time, but you got to remember when we started this unit, rational means a fraction. And what kind of number can you never have on the bottom of a fraction? No? 0. So I'm just going to go and check real fast and make sure that negative 2 won't make either of these bottoms be 0. Negative 2 plus 1, that's not 0. 4 times negative 2 plus 5, that's not 0. Okay, so we're good. Negative 2 is our answer. If that had gotten us a 0, it'd be, anybody remember the big name with the E? When you get an answer but it doesn't work?
Oh, hold on.
Extraneous.
Yeah, that one.
Alright, these are schmeezy. Let me let you try one of those real quick before we move it up a step.
Is there a symbol for that, or do you have to?
No, you gotta just write it out.
Try to use them. There's a lot left.
Alright, this one says 3 over 5x equals 2 over x minus 7. Give that one a try on your own real quick. See if you can get that one knocked out. Then we'll step it up a step. Fraction equals a fraction. It's easy work, just cross multiply.
I could do these all day.
Negative 3.
Alright, all I've done is my cross products. So wherever you are, you might want to pause and make sure you got your cross products right. Everybody okay on that? Alright, so now, even though it's got an X on both sides, it's still just a 2-step middle school equation. The shortest thing, good, the shortest thing to do would be to subtract 3x. I'll still have people say add 21, which is not wrong. That just gives you another step to do in a little bit. We can cut down our number of steps if we get those x's hooked up, so we'll subtract that 3x. Gets me negative 21 is equal to 7x, and then just divide by 7. And you do indeed get negative 3. Go make sure that doesn't make the denominator a 0. Here it would make a negative 15. That's okay. Here it would make a negative 10, and that's okay. So, winner, winner, chicken dinner. Alright, so fraction equals fraction. Bam, bam, bam. We just cross multiply. Now, what if we got some more stuff? Got what we need on that page? I've got a couple of you writing. That's
Are we really gonna do this again today?
fabulous. So,
I think we should put on the commercial for the popular thing, you know, like cleaning stuff. You never seen, have you ever used Fabuloso? Like it's purple, got flowers on it, smells really.
Oh yeah, I
Flowers.
use that to basically come off water to make it. You ever seen it?
Is that soap? No.
that makes CJ chuckle. Stuff. X. 5 over x plus 7 over 4 is equal to 9 over x. Okay, so to make sure you distinguish this problem from the first couple that we did, this has got more stuff on the left side. This is no longer just a single fraction equal to a single fraction. Okay, so when we have multiple things happening on one side, we can't just cross multiply. Okay?
Not to make it into one.
Well, kind of. My goal, we're fabulous at solving middle school and junior high equations. Y'all are champions at that. So my goal here is to be able to get rid of those fractions and make this a plain old equation to solve. Okay? So what I'm thinking here is, I wonder how I can cancel out those denominators. So, just think of some normal little tot fractions here. What if I had 1/2 plus 2/3? What would I multiply that by to cancel out the fractions? You're right, technically. What could I multiply this whole expression by to cancel out the fractions? 6. Why 6? It's the common denominator. Very good. So if we multiplied this whole thing by 6, 6 over 2, that would cancel out and make that 3. 6 over 3, that would cancel out and make that 2. We would get rid of the fractions. Okay? So, on the one on the smart board, we got an x, a 4, and an x. Now we've done common denominator during all our adding and subtracting. What would an x, a 4, and an x, what would the common denominator be? 4x. So we're going to multiply this whole thing by 4x. Now, I'm going to go through this baby steps the first time and show you how it all works. But then after that, it's just an easy canceling game, and I'll show you the easy canceling game over here on the dry erase board. So how this all works mathematically. 4x times this. That means I have 5 times 4x over x. Okay, I'm probably never going to write it all out this way again. I'm just trying to show you how it all works mathematically. Then I go here, plus 7 times 4x over 4 equals, then I go here, 9 times 4x over x. We just multiplied all of them by 4x. And so now if you start thinking about our ninja stuff, there those x's go away. So that piece is just a 20, 5 times 4. Here, those 4's go away, so that's just a 7x. Very good. Equals, there the x's go away, 9 times 4. So now there's your two-step middle school equation. Okay, what would I do to finish this dude off? I gave you an ugly answer one here to start with because this doesn't go in, 7 doesn't go evenly into it. 7x equals 16. Isn't that ugly? So divide by 7. And I'm just going to leave that as 16 over 7. All right. So and that's not a big deal how that works out. When I start doing this, 5 over x plus 7 over 4 equals 9 over x. So once I figured out my common denominator was 4x, right? Once we figured out whatever our common denominator is, I'm going to go here and I'm going to do the same thing. So you can write that out, but I don't know. I just don't write it anymore. I go here and I just say, hey, those x's cancel out, so 5 times 4. I go here, I say, hey, those 4's cancel out, so 7 times x. I go here, I say, hey, those x's cancel out, so 9 times 4.
Okay, that's much more logical.
So I'll get there a lot quicker. But if, like, some of y'all need to see that work, Tori didn't want to see that work. So that's just up to y'all how y'all want to write it.
Sounds fabulous.
Fabuloso. Alright, let's try another one.
Never heard of it.
Back.
I thought it was like, yeah, I thought that one. Those are like,
I've seen those beads. I know what those
I
are.
have those.
One of them
There
colors.
is one. Purple's but they smell really bad.
Smell really good or itch to death. Dude. That's quite a trail.
Well, maybe you're allergic to it. I don't know what they are. I know they're
Okay,
called-
so here we got 3x over x plus 1 minus 5 over 2x equals 3 over 2x. My common denominator has to have a 2x in it. And what else does it have to have in it? An x plus 1. Remember when we did the adding and subtracting, if it showed up in one of our denominators, it had to be a part of our common denominator, right? So we'd have to have an x plus 1 and a 2x. Now, yes, you could, Lady Jo was saying that's 2x squared plus 2x, and you could do that, but I'm never going to do that. The reason I'm never going to do that is because when I start distributing it, if I've already multiplied this together, it's harder for me to see what parts cancel out. When I have it in separate parts, I can see what parts cancel out easier. Okay, so that's just my preference. If you want to multiply that together, you can. But I don't, this way, you'll see what I'm talking about. This way I can see what cancels out. So this is what, the way I say this, and this is not politically correct, but this is what I always do. We're going to take this piece, and we're going to bomb this piece. So it's got an x plus 1, and there's an x plus 1. So those canceled out. But the 2x times the 3x, 6x squared.
Oh, yeah.
X times x. And then minus, now we got to bomb this piece. So the 2x's cancel out. So I've got 5 times x plus 1. 5x plus 5. Now I put that whole thing in parentheses so I don't forget that subtraction's supposed to subtract all of it. Remember in the Yay Math video, he went ahead and distributed a negative on that. If you want to do that, you can. Equals. Grant's right, the 2x's cancel out, so I distributed 3x plus 3. Very good.
Wow, look at that.
Okay, can you solve your what in parentheses first?
Okay, so what I'm going to do with that parentheses, I can't, it's a 5x and a 5, so I can't combine like terms. I'm just going to write it all as that subtraction problem. This means 6x squared minus 5x and then minus 5, right? Okay, now what do I need to do?
Just do your middle school equation.
No. This one's took it up a step.
Could
You have to get rid of that square root.
you'd get the square
Oh,
root of x.
whoa, slow down there, silly boys. We got a squared, which means we've got a quadratic. So we're going to have a quadratic to solve, which could be factoring or completing the square or the quadratic formula. But whichever one of those we choose, we've got to set it equal to 0. So we need to move the 3x over, and we need to move the 3 over. Okay? So I'm going to subtract 3x from itself and its buddy, and I'm going to subtract 3 from itself and its buddy. So I'm going to have 6x squared minus 8x minus 8 is equal to 0.
And then you have to, it's what times to be.
Okay, what Garrett's looking at the a times c, and I'm probably not going to do that. Why? And it's not wrong, Garrett. It's not wrong at all. But what is it about this one that makes me maybe not want to do that?
Because
My a is 6. Whenever I put in my 2 parentheses like this, like what Garrett's getting ready to do, I always like my a to be 1, so I just have an x times x. So if we wanted to do that a times c, what multiplies to make 48 and adds to make negative 8, we would have to do the factoring by grouping, which isn't the end of the world, but when it's up to me on how I'm going to solve and it comes to factoring by grouping, I'll usually do the quadratic formula instead. But before I do the quadratic formula, I can get some smaller numbers somehow here.
you can
Yeah, right. They've all got a 2 in common. So this would be the same as 3x squared minus 4x minus 4. Alright, so we're looking, I'm going to write it because it's been a while. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So negative b, that means the opposite sign of your b, and our b is negative 4, so we're going to say x equals 4. Plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 4 squared, negative 4 times negative 4 is 16. Minus 4 times my a is 3, times my c is negative 4. All over 2 times my a is 3. Okay. So I've got 16 plus 48. That's 16 plus 48. 64. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've got, and the square root of 64 is 8. So there's my 2 equations I've got to solve. Check me out, those of y'all that don't know what I did. 4 times 3 is 12, times 4 is 48, and that negative times negative makes a positive, so it's 16 plus 48. That got me 64, and then I square rooted 64, and I got 8. So I got to do 4 plus 8 is 12 divided by 6 is 2. 4 minus 8 is negative 4 divided by 6 is negative 2/3. Okay, so I'm looking potentially at those 2 answers. We got to make sure they're not going to make our denominator be 0. I haven't scrolled back up yet because some people are still getting their notes there. But I'll scroll back up and make sure and
Plug it in for x.
see if any. I'm just going to see if either one of those would make my bottom be a 0. We okay to scroll it up there and look? 2 and negative 2/3. 2 plus 1 is not 0. 2 times 2 is not 0, so that's okay. Negative 2/3 plus 1 is not 0. 2 times negative 2/3 is not 0. So we've got those 2 answers.
So it can't equal 0?
Right. Can never have a 0 in the denominator. You got it, sir. You got it, sir. I do not.
I have journals.
Alright, I just got a couple more we'll look at with you, so you're doing fabuloso.
I'm just looking at my notes. I just give myself a big but
Well, that's unfortunate.
oh yeah, I was right.
You're right over there.
You want to see? Yeah.
Alright, let's look at another one. How long? I got 6 over x minus 3 equals 8x squared over x squared minus 9 minus, well, if I didn't throw this next part at you, we would have just cross multiplied, but
That's what I was thinking.
minus 4x over x plus 3. Alright. picked this one for a couple of reasons. My first favorite reason I picked it is for the common denominator. Very good. My common denominator, and I'm going to write it and then we'll talk about what Lady Jo said and we get a new color. My common denominator is going to be x plus 3 times x minus 3. Okay, now here's my question for all y'all that still don't understand. Why am I not worried about this in my common denominator? Oh, this is the same as that, isn't it?
3 squared is 9.
Yes, it is. Very good. So when I wrote that twice, that's the same as if that. If I were to multiply this out like Garrett said, that would give me that.
I have a question.
Got it.
Could you still ninja math that out?
We're going to start bombing and cancel some
I
stuff
think
out.
I like the bombing more than the ninja.
Oh, here.
Yeah. I just like the noise.
So when we bomb this piece, the x minus 3's cancel out. So we just have to distribute the 6 to the x plus 3.
So it's 6x plus 18.
Yes, sir. Equals, now, here's what Grant was talking about. That whole thing would cancel out. So that one would just be the 8x squared left. Okay, minus the x plus 3's cancel.
It'd be 4x.
So it'd be 4x squared. What else? Minus 12x, right?
Yes.
Okay, make sure we kind of hesitated there. Here, the x plus 3's canceled. So we did 4x times x and 4x times negative 3.
I have a question. On your 8x and your 4x squared, could you just cancel that?
We're going to simplify them, yeah. So on the right side, over here, Grant's seeing some simplifying to do. I got 6x plus 18 equals 8x squared minus 4x squared is 4x squared. And then minus negative 12x, that minus negative turns that to a positive.
Wait,
Wait, so you have to subtract 8 from 4 and 12?
Because those were like, well, no.
Like
We had like terms with our x squareds. 8x squared minus 4x squared. That was like terms.
So
So I there was a subtraction sign, so I subtracted.
oh, okay, I see.
Those x squares wouldn't cancel out. So both x
8 of them minus 4 of them left 4 of them. The variables stay the same.
Okay.
Good question. Good question. Brandon, did you have another question?
When you cancel out your 6's, when you cancel out your 6 when you subtract it across, would you set that equal to 0 for the 18?
So that would leave us with 4x squared plus 6x minus 18 is equal to 0. Now some of y'all weren't paying attention and Grant just took us a step forward. He set this whole thing equal to 0 because it was a quadratic. Quadratic, you got to set equal to 0, so he subtracted 6x from itself and its buddy. Also I had to subtract 18, but it didn't have a buddy. So just a minus 18 stuck on the end over there.
Couldn't you factor that or not?
I'm going to take at least a 2 out of it because they're all even, but that's still going to make my A not be a 1.
Okay.
So if anytime my A is a 1, I'm factoring for sure.
Okay.
But this, if I divide all that by 2, and you don't have to divide it by 2, but y'all know I'm a pea-brain, so I got to work with smaller numbers. Now, since like Grant was saying, my A is still not a 1, so I don't want to mess with grouping, so I'm just going to do the quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac.
So the 3,
2a.
the 3's your b, right?
I think we should
Yes.
do the challenge.
Well, they're not doing it this year.
Oh, yeah. We can do it in the middle school challenge.
No talent show?
No.
Only middle school.
She said that no one signed up.
They never announced.
No one, yeah, we told her that.
Yeah, that did do it.
I didn't
So,
even know, like,
should have that.
You know, but, you know, but
It was sad.
Okay, so 4 times 2 is 8, times 9 is 72, and a negative times 8 is a positive, so I'm going to have 9 plus 72. 9 plus 72 is 81. You with me? Square root of 81 is 9. So I'm going to do negative 3 plus 9 divided by 4. and negative 3 minus 9 divided by 4. Okay, let's go through that again. I did that mental math, but y'all can plug it in your calculator. 4 times 2 is 8, times 9 is 72. A negative times a negative is positive, so 9 plus 72 is 81. Square root 81, and you get 9. So that's where this stuff over here comes from.
So it'd be negative 3 and
Negative 3 plus 9 is 6. 6 divided by 4, that's 3 halves. Negative 3 minus 9 is negative 12. Negative 12 divided by 4 is negative 3. So we got 1.5 and negative 3. I don't remember about my denominator. We'll have to go and look and check and see if either of those would make our denominator be 0. That might be a second reason why I picked this problem. Do you see anything fishy in your denominators?
so say negative 3 makes it a 0. It would cancel it out. That wouldn't be an answer.
Right here, negative 3 plus 3 is 0. And that can't happen. So negative 3 is no good. It gets kicked out. It's extraneous. So 3 halves is our only correct answer. Michaela applauded for that.
I have a question.
Yes,
like,
Miss
towards the
Tori
very
Lindsay.
beginning of the problem. Why did you negative 12x into positive?
Because I was
Because you minus
subtracting
it.
it. Minus negative.
Oh.
Got it. Alright, just got to go loss.
One more.
Yep.
I'm fluent. Fluent in Spanish.
Did y'all see my kindergartner on my bus pick me some flowers this morning? He was so proud. He was standing there at the bus stop smiling. He's such a little toot.
And they're
So he's trying. Well, I didn't have anything else. Mrs. Ledoux came in and was like, "You want a vase?" And I said, "No, the phone cups are better." But he's such a
The
little
color's
toot,
really
so I think he's trying to make, do some kindergarten kissing up, get the bus driver some flowers.
Can we make this one easy?
Can we do what?
Can we make this one easy?
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
Directions change on it.
I got it. Easy.
I knew you were going to that.
It's easy though.
They always say.
Okay, directions for this one. Find the inverse. Alright, now we did finding the inverse last unit, but we haven't done it yet with these things. When we found the inverse last unit, we had the two-step process. Step 1, we switched the variables. Step 2, when you switch the variables, that made you a new equation. You solved that new equation for y.
Oh, I do remember that.
We did it. I don't normally try to lie to you,
Yeah.
except for, when I tell you it's snowing outside right now. That might be a lie.
But it is.
70 degrees.
Somewhere on this earth it is.
So great that next
5 o'clock somewhere, you know what I'm saying?
Alright, so first thing I'm going to do, and this isn't necessary, but it is for pea brains like me, I need to write down that I know f of x is the same as y. That step is not necessary unless you're a pea brain like me. Now that I've got that taken care of, step 1 over there by River and Marshall says switch the variables. So I'm going to write x equals 2 over y plus 3. Just switch the variables. That was step 1. Step 2 says solve for y. Look at what we've made here. This is what we started the period off with. I've got a fraction equals a fraction. So, couldn't I do
Cross multiplication.
to get me started? So that's 2 times 1
2.
equals. Now, don't distribute this time. Okay, let's say this means x times
Y plus 3.
y plus 3.
Over 2. No, wait, no. 2 cancels.
Woo, you're so ahead of me. Now, let me say this because Grant's on to this. This isn't the only way I could have started here. Remember, because we're not going to get a number answer because we've got a couple of variables. Before, when we were actually solving, we only had one variable. So that's why we were able to solve. This one, our answer is still going to be an equation because we've got 2 variables. So you did not have to do this. You could have just said, well, this whole thing's being divided by x plus 3, so I'm going to multiply by it. I mean, there are other ways. But now if I'm trying to get this y all by itself, I'm going to say, well, I need to get rid of that x.
So you got to
It's being multiplied, so I'm going to divide.
divide by x.
Okay?
Divide by x and they cancel, and then you have to make that a 2x.
No. 2 over x. Yep. So over on the left side,
And you get
So
y
you got
plus
2
3.
over x equals y plus 3.
2 over x equals y plus 3. We've almost got the y by itself.
Okay, then you subtract 3
Then
from both
subtract
sides.
the 3 from both sides. What is 2 over x minus 3?
2 over x
Out of kid Chloe, it's 2 over x minus 3.
Equals y.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow.
That'd be-
So that's your inverse.
I don't feel like we really did anything.
No, all we did was move stuff around. You're right.
Right.
And I don't like those problems as much just because of exactly what Riley said.
It's just like repeating.
We just move stuff around. I like the ones where we get to know, hey, x was 7. You know, we get to figure something out.
Honestly, I don't
I
think
don't. I like this one a lot better.
You were all over it, Grant. You really were. Okay, what we got happening now? Tomorrow, study guide, pretending it's a test on your own, no talking,
Oh,
no,
no, I'm
no,
so bad at that not
all that
talking
stuff,
part.
pretending it's a test. And then Thursday, we'll knock it out together, and then Friday, you'll make an A on it. Sound like a plan?
Yeah.
Refuse.
Very good?
Yeah.
I don't want to do it.
Do what?
Game crazy.
I understand this stuff,
No.
but everything else is learning is